Two police officers pulled over a black man on a nearly deserted street late at night, accusing him of a crime he didn't commit. But what they didn't know, the man they stopped was the chief prosecutor of the entire state, and he wasn't going to just let their lies slide quietly. What unfolded next? Absolutely no one saw it coming. But hey, let's rewind and start from the very beginning. David Miller, tall, composed, a middle-aged black man dressed sharply in a clean navy suit, was walking through the peaceful, sleepy suburbs of Woodrest. The night was quiet, almost eerie, with only the distant chirp of crickets and the glow of dim streetlights casting long shadows across the empty pavement. He was heading home after another long, draining day, one spent deep in preparation for a major case that could shake the courtroom. His briefcase felt heavier than usual, not from weight, but from the responsibility it carried. His mind raced, filled with strategy, legal angles, and every move he'd need to make in court the next day. Then, as he turned a familiar corner, the blinding flash of red and blue sirens cut through the darkness. The silence shattered. David instinctively stopped, his hands slightly raised, signaling he was no threat. He'd been here before, too many times. A patrol cruiser rolled up beside him. Out stepped two officers. "Evening," said Officer Barnes, a stocky man in his 40s, his voice dripping with suspicion and that smug little smirk on his face. "What brings you out here this late?" David, calm but alert, answered evenly. "Just walking home, officer." "Is there a problem?" Barnes glanced at his younger partner, Officer Grant, who seemed unsure. Nervous, even. "We got a call about a burglary in the area," Barnes replied, crossing his arms. "And you?" "Well, you matched the description." David blinked, caught between disbelief and insult. "Burglary? I just left my office downtown. I'm a lawyer." Barnes gave a cold laugh. "A lawyer, huh? That right? What's in the briefcase then?" "Stolen goods." Grant shifted uncomfortably, but stayed quiet. David, steady as ever, replied, "Legal documents. You're welcome to look." But before the sentence was done, Barnes yanked the briefcase out of his hand without asking, rifling through the organized documents like they were trash.
"Huh," Barnes said mockingly.
"Someone's really trying hard to look innocent, aren't they?" David's patience cracked. "This is harassment," he said firmly. "I haven't done anything wrong." Barnes snapped. "That's not your call to make. Turn around. Hands behind your back." "On what grounds?" David demanded, his voice rising. "You have no evidence." Barnes didn't care. He grabbed David roughly, slapped on the cuffs. "Resisting an officer, for starters," he barked. "Let's see what else we find, huh?" Grant hesitated. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the radio. "Dispatch, we're bringing in a suspect," he mumbled, eyes avoiding David's. Thrown in the back of the cruiser, David didn't feel fear. Not now. What coursed through him was rage. Burning, pulsing, controlled rage. He didn't say a word, but made a vow. This injustice? This time? It wasn't going to stand. At the station, the cold fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air reeked of disinfectant and old coffee. Phones rang in the distance. Voices echoed off cement walls. It was a place designed to strip people down. Barnes, still smug, took charge of processing David like he was just another criminal statistic. David's wallet, phone, briefcase, all taken. Tossed aside. Treated like evidence before a trial even began. They locked him in a small, freezing cell. The walls were gray, chipped. The bench bolted to the floor. A cage. In the next room, Barnes sat behind a computer, typing up lies. Burglary. Resisting arrest. Possession of stolen property. None of it true, but it didn't matter. His report painted David as a threat. As dangerous. As guilty. And Barnes? He smirked again. Across the room, Grant stood still. Arms folded. Jaw tight. Silent. Watching it all unfold. Maybe he knew it was wrong, but silence? Silence was easier than truth. Inside that cold cell, David sat. Fists clenched, heart pounding, anger radiating through him. The man who had spent his life fighting systemic injustice was now facing it. firsthand. From the hallway, he heard Barnes joking to another officer. "Another one off the streets," he laughed. "Can't wait to watch the judge throw the book at this guy." David stared at the floor, then up at the bars. They had no idea who he was. But they were about to find out. The next morning, he used his one phone call and dialed his legal team. By noon, Rachel, his top assistant, stormed into the station, briefcase in hand, fire in her eyes. The evidence she carried not only proved David's innocence, it exposed Barnes. Within hours, David was released. But freedom? That wasn't enough. Not by a long shot. A week later, a packed courtroom buzzed with whispers. Every seat filled. Reporters, spectators, legal pros, all waiting for the trial to begin. Officer Barnes sat with fake confidence, lounging at the prosecution table. Grant looked pale, eyes darting. Sitting beside them, Patricia Reynolds, the district's toughest prosecutor, known for her ruthless, tough-on-crime attitude. She barely looked at David when he entered. But David? He walked in like a storm in a suit.
Calm, poised,
controlled. He carried himself like a man who held truth in one hand and power in the other. As he reached the defense table, he placed his briefcase down with precision. The room hushed. The judge entered. The trial began. Then David stood. "Your Honor," he said clearly, "I'll be representing myself." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Barnes stiffened. Reynolds turned sharply, eyes narrowing. Over the next hour, David dismantled their lies. One by one. First, a video, time-stamped from a nearby ATM, crystal clear. No doubt he was nowhere near the alleged crime. Then, the bombshell. Audio from the squad car. Barnes' voice played loudly, mocking David, admitting there wasn't even a suspect that matched the crime. Reynolds objected, again and again, but the judge shut her down. The truth was undeniable. Finally, David called Officer Grant to the stand. Trembling, the young officer hesitated, then broke. "It wasn't right," he whispered. "There was no evidence. Barnes told me to make it look real." Gasps filled the courtroom. Barnes exploded, shouting, "He's lying." But it was too late. The truth had shattered everything. Reynolds?
silent, defeated.
Then, David approached the bench one last time. "Your Honor," he said, "one final piece of evidence." He handed the judge a file, then turned to the courtroom. "This," he said, "is my resume." He paused. "Before I was arrested without cause, before false charges were pinned on me, I was preparing for this very trial. I'm not just a lawyer. I'm the chief prosecutor of this state." Dead silence. "And I will not stand for corruption. Not in my courtroom. Not in my state. And definitely not from those sworn to protect it." Barnes turned pale. Reynolds looked away. The judge dismissed the charges. Immediately. But it wasn't over. David filed a formal complaint. The investigation that followed uncovered years of misconduct by Barnes. He was fired, stripped of his badge.
Done.
Grant? He cooperated, and was given probation, a chance to redeem himself. Weeks later, David stood on the courthouse steps, surrounded by reporters. "This was never just about me," he said into the mics. "It's about a system that protects injustice. But if we stand together, we can fix it." The crowd erupted in applause. David nodded, stepping back. Vindicated, but not finished. His fight? It had only just begun.